We are back. It's InfoWars Nightly News on this September 29th, 2011, Thursday edition. And we've got such an incredible amount of health freedom news right now that I wanted to get Mike Adams of naturalnews.com, the Health Ranger, here in studio to recap the incredible last few days. Their confirmed report with the letter from the Department of Health and Human Services calling out, basically harassing people, asking them if they've had their shots. We've got a judge in Wisconsin ruling that you can't grow your own food or have your own cow for your own milk, saying the police power won't allow that. Just incredible. And we have other things happening, like Chuck Norris coming out and saying GMO is dangerous, it should be labeled. And the reason that's important is he's seen as kind of a right-wing figure, and they tried to make it left-wing environmental stuff, right-wing, other issues. The point is, this affects everybody. And I've noticed that the environmentalists, I'm going to cover the Chuck Norris thing first with you, Mike. The system is great at controlling the cancer associations to never look at all the real cures and treatments. Or they're really great at having government institutions and groups that look at missing children. And then you find out that's so DynCorp and Halliburton and the UN can actually run the kidnapped kids and not get in trouble. So the criminals tend to try to lead the resistance to themselves. And they try to make it a liberal conservative issue. They have the environmentalists going after carbon dioxide that plants live off of, and that is 0.0360% of the atmosphere, and is very low right now. But then they want to ignore toxic waste dumping, Fukushima exploding like 100 Hiroshimas or Nagasaki's. I mean, the biggest nuclear disaster in history. They don't want to focus on GMO. We are biological creatures that were developed on this planet through a process, and now we're not supposed to even debate hundreds of companies randomly splicing everything, and in all the studies of the GMO, it's causing sterilization in the rodents. All the health problems that mirror that happening in our populations. And that's why I wanted to raise this point first, because Mayor Bloomberg came out today, this is Cyber News Service, and said, quote, government's highest duty is to push healthy foods, but he wants to arrest you if you have too much salt in your restaurant in New York or too much fat. But see, that's a red herring. Sure, those things probably aren't good. It's, oh, the government's going to protect you from things, but we say GMOs and vaccines are good. So again, they're trying to lead the opposition, and this is a central point for me that's really key to understanding how they co-opt reasonable environmentalism, turn it into a carbon tax, or they co-opt concerns about really unhealthy food we're being fed, and they're actually got us distracted off into fats or salt, when that's nothing compared to GMO and additives. So here is the expert to talk about that, Mike Adams, here in studio. Mike, great to have you.
Alex, good to be here.
Let's cover this piece first.
Well, I'm really glad you brought up this piece, because this issue in particular, we've got to expose the idea that it's completely a false paradigm that the government should be telling you what to eat in the first place. We've got to get the government out of the way of these processed foods and to stop subsidizing corn syrup, for example, stop subsidizing sugar. What we've got to do is get the government to enable food freedom, so that we can actually choose the kinds of foods that we want to consume, whether it's raw milk or GMO-free foods, or have honest labeling on those foods, so that we're not buying GMOs. What Bloomberg is saying is that the government should be telling us what to eat and what not to eat. And if that happens, we're going to get a distorted message that is hijacked by industry, and we're going to end up with very unhealthy processed dead foods rather than healthy foods anyway. So Bloomberg is wrong on this count. We got to get back to freedom and liberty about foods, not government telling us what to eat.
Mike, Chuck Norris is making the point that we at least have a right to have GMO labeled, but government, whether it's salmon that's been crossed with insects or whatever the case is, they don't want us to have a right to know if milk has growth hormone in it. Obviously, Big Pharma that's created this modern Frankensteinian type system, they know what they're doing. But from your research, what is GMO doing to people? I mean, looking out there to TV land, tell folks what's in the GMO.
Well, GMO is just based on a pack of lies. I mean, number one, they say GMOs have higher yields. They don't. That's a complete fabrication. Number two, they say that GMOs are safe for consumption, and yet all the studies consistently show that GMOs have very dangerous and undesirable side effects, including potentially widespread infertility. The fact that the Bt genes in the corn can theoretically then interact with the genetic code of the bacteria in your own gut, it can turn you into a pesticide factory where you're actually producing pesticide chemicals in your own body. And from that, it's no wonder that people might have chronic fatigue. It's no wonder they might have immune suppression. I mean, people often, they wonder, why do I feel so sick, or why do I feel so tired? GMOs could be a very key part of that answer. But ultimately, Alex, this is about it's a campaign of ignorance that the industry is trying to push on the American people, to say that you don't have the right to know you're eating GMOs. The FDA and the USDA, they don't want them labeled. They don't want you to be able to read a label and say, oh, is there GMO in this food or not? And even Whole Foods has not taken, in my opinion, enough of a stand to say we're going to eliminate GMOs from our stores. But I think this is going to change, Alex. I know there's some good news coming up next week. I think there are going to be more grassroots efforts to let people know that we demand honest labeling of GMOs so that we can make a choice, Alex.
And they've also capitulated at Whole Foods, where I like to shop. They, a few months ago, put a sign up, as you know, saying there's so much GMO, even in so-called organic now, we can no longer say that we're GMO free. And you just brought up the fact that this can make microorganisms that produce pesticide. The public may not know that Bt, that's being engineered into a lot of different plants, corn and other things, grows its own pesticide pharmacologically so that bugs can't eat it. Now, honeybees are like humans. They'll go ahead and still get the pollen, and that's one thing in German studies has been linked to part of the cocktail of reasons, as you know, they're dying. So right there, I mean, just backing up what you were saying, that we're getting chronic bowel problems exploding, cancer exploding. I mean, if you look at the countries with the GMO, they also have the highest vaccination. North America, New Zealand, Australia, highest cancer rates. You can follow these maps and you can see that what's happening in the lab animals is also happening with humans. The problem is you can test the life cycle of a rat in a year or so. With humans, it takes 20, 30, 40, 50 years just to see generationally what's happening, but we're already in the first generation mirroring the reduced fertility, the increased cancer in the first generation. But as you know, by the third generation of these major studies that multiple governments and institutions have done, by third generation, rats, guinea pigs, mice, near total sterilization, all sorts of mutations. My God, I mean, this is incredible.
Yeah, it's like we are living out a ticking time bomb, a multi-generational time bomb. And there's even more to it than what you just said, Alex. Remember that these biotech companies are running experiments with injecting crops with genes to grow vaccines. So if they take this to the next logical step, which they do because they always push it too far when they're playing God with seeds, they could have you start eating your vaccine corn.
Well, like Bill Gates says a decade ago, that's the plan, is to have pharmacological crops where you don't have a choice. And again, because plants just don't have one daddy or one mommy, they can have 1%, 5%, whatever from pollen that hits them. We already know the GMO has infected most of the corn varieties in the world. It's going to spread these pharmacological crops into everything.
Yeah, the spreading is out of control, and it's a Pandora's box. You can't put these genes back in the box and control them. This is, I've said it on your show, I said it earlier today, Alex, GMOs are the greatest environmental catastrophe that has ever been unleashed on our planet. And this is why I'm saying so strongly that anyone who wants to have any credibility as a so-called environmentalist, they must speak out against GMOs. And that's sort of an appeal to perhaps the left. But then we have this wonderful action by courageous patriots such as Chuck Norris on the right who are now standing up against GMOs. Good for him.
And that's what scares the system.
Absolutely.
They want to make common sense left or right when it belongs to everybody.
Yeah, and isn't it beautiful that people are getting this on both sides of the aisle? Because this is really a human rights, even a civil rights issue. This is about
it's a property right. They're contaminating our bodies, our farms, our lives with their garbage.
It is an assault on the future of life on our planet. I mean, that's what it is. If you believe in protecting life, whether you're a conservative or a liberal or progressive, an independent, libertarian, it doesn't matter. Everyone should be concerned with protecting life on our planet, especially the future of human life. Not to mention crop life and seeds, and can seeds propagate generation after
It's all
generation.
interconnected, and that goes back to the beginning. The left, the big Soros outfits, have tried to keep environmentalism about carbon dioxide or about just rainforests or something like that, instead of the basics of life, GMO, that is engaged in a corporate takeover of society. Now, in the time we've got left, this is all up at naturalnews.com, and you're always gracious enough to let us mirror your work at infowars.com, at least some of the great work, because there's so much, it's very prolific. Let's run through what you've discovered this week. On the heels of, in California, they're going door to door saying, we're here for your fourth inoculation, with no law behind them. There is a law on the governor's desk to give kids shots without parental consent. But now, headline, CDC now calling U.S. households and demanding child immunization records as part of a vaccine surveillance and tracking program. Tell us about this.
All right, this is a CDC-led phone interrogation program. It is an admitted vaccine surveillance and compliance tracking program. And those are their own words. That's the way they describe it. It involves researchers from the University of Chicago who call your house and demand you produce your child immunization records so that they can then compile reports of which areas of the country have vaccination rates that are too low, so that they can have more vaccination efforts and certainly more propaganda in those areas to boost vaccination rates, which they call public health. But we really know what it's all about. It's really about giving children degenerative disease, weakening their immune systems, making the population more susceptible to outbreaks of pandemics, which no doubt lie in our very near future. Because we've seen companies like, remember, Baxter Pharmaceuticals was shipping live viral material in the vaccine material. We've seen Dr. Maurice Hilleman, former Merck vaccine scientist, admitting that vaccines contain up to 40 different stealth viruses that have not been identified, many of which may cause cancer. Vaccines, this is the big story, Alex, is that vaccines are becoming the channel through which infectious disease will be spread throughout the population. Vaccines are the entry point. They don't prevent infectious disease. They infect the population.
Well, even government-funded studies 3 years ago on the H1N1, or 2.5 years ago, in Canada found that it doubled your chances of getting the regular flu if you took the H1N1 shot.
Even the flu vaccine, we did a study or a research on this. 99 out of 100 people who get the seasonal flu shot have no benefit from it whatsoever. And even the 1 out of 100 is a dubious benefit, self-reported by the drug companies. But it's incredible. Taking a flu shot would work great if you're a time traveler, because it's last year's viral strain. So if you have a time machine and you believe in vaccines, then take the flu shot, go back to last year, and you might be protected. But if you're not a time traveler, flu shots make absolutely no sense, Alex.
No, it is a total hoax within a hoax. And the good news is people are getting wise to the hoax. I know you've seen this report out of Wisconsin. The state judge says no right to produce or eat food. They're arresting people that allow folks to store cows at their dairies, and then because they want the fresh milk. It's like a private club, like in the old dry counties. You could go to a club where you're allowed to drink. Well, this is drinking milk, and I have the judge's ruling right here. He says there's plaintiffs do not have a fundamental right to board their cow at the farm of a farmer, and it says the Zinnecker plaintiffs' private contract does not fall outside the scope of the state's police power. Number 5, no plaintiffs do not have a fundamental right to produce and consume foods of their choice. That is the big bombshell right there. And that's why we have the headline, no right to produce or eat your own food. I mean, this is just incredible.
This is parroting the new paradigm of command and control economies, of crony capitalism, of a police state government that's running a medical police state and a food police state that really says you are a slave and you're going to eat what we tell you to eat, and you have no fundamental right to choose what you want to consume or to choose what type of medicine you want to treat your children with, or even yourself. This is the state mandating to you how to live your life, what kind of toilet you can have, banning asthma inhalers, which the EPA has done recently. They want to control every little aspect of our lives.
In other words, put down that carrot and back up slowly, as this article says.
Yeah.
Anything you eat or grow can and will be used against you in a court of law.
It's incredible, but this is them setting the stage to make mass arrests of gardeners and farmers. If you think Julie Bass was outrageous, wait till they do it.
And by the way, folks, don't say this can't be happening. This is happening here. Look at all over the country, life in prison for filming cops in public. And even when the courts throw it out, they keep arresting people. I mean, we've got a bunch of crooks in government who were paid off by big corporations who are exempt.